نشكر الدكتور محمود الحاضر على هذا العرض التقديمي الجميل. والآن بس قبل ما نبدأ أتمنى من الكل يكتب اسمه على الطاولة، خصوصا اللي توهم داخلين. الآن بننتقل إلى فقرة ورش العمل في مجال استشراف المستقبل، وبنبدأها بورشة Introduction to Future Thinking. يلقيها كل من السيد ميخيل وفريقه. ميخيل, the floor is yours.
Hello. Oh, sorry for that. Good morning. Can we switch to the presentation? First, I would like to congratulate Mr. Mahmoud for the achievement. I was able to follow most of the conversation, but my Arabic is still very, very bad. But I understood a lot of things about fikra, aleptica, hebtat, taksim. You can see all the challenges, the ideas, the innovation, how that is going to be applied. The first time I met Mahmoud, it was doing the assessment for the Allying Distribution Company, and it was a right moment to be, and all the things they were doing took him the achievement of the best, most innovative person in the country. Today, we are going to be talking about the future. The future is something that is happening in the UAE very, very fast. If you look back in time, 30 years ago, most of the things you have today were not here. And today, just in 30 years, you change it everything. In the same time, in my country, in Spain, we did nothing. We still have the same buildings, the same street, the same companies. We have the same things, more or less. We have more people, but more or less it's the same. Here, everything was so fast that the future seems faster here than it seems in Europe. And that is interesting, because that is changing the way you think and the way you shape things in your own life. We work for a company that is called Fast Forward. Fast Forward is based in Madrid, but we have offices in London and Singapore. And we are basically a strategic foresight and futures anticipation consultancy. What we do is look at what is happening today, collect signals, identify the trends, and learn how to use those things to shape the future. But we don't do it alone. We don't read everything alone. We have machines doing that for us. So we have machine learning and artificial intelligence reading 25 million articles per day all around the globe, synthesizing the results into the trends happening only today. And we can compare that to what happened yesterday. So we are able to change a lot of things with just machines. So you can just follow us or visit the website. We are only on Instagram and Twitter. And we are here just to talk about the future. The team that is here with me, you can see all of them on the upper side. You will see the picture here also. These are some of the customers we are working for around the world. Some of them are in the UAE, like the government of Dubai, the government of Abu Dhabi, the Executive Council. Part of it has been with the assessment cycles for the awards. Part of it is about projects. We also work for the government of Singapore. We work for many big companies around the world, helping them to understand the future and how they can use what is happening today to shape the world toward a new place where they want to be. It doesn't have to be the one you like, but it's going to be the one you get the most benefit out of it. The team that is here with us is Andrea, Laura, Pablo, Esther, and Helga. They are all over there. We are going to be with you in the tables during the workshop. This is going to be basically a hands-off thing. So we want to show you how you can read something and turn that into a piece, thing, product, or service from the future. So we are going to do that in 2 days. Today is day 1, tomorrow it will be day 2. They are going to be all around when we start the workshop, and we also have a local team that is going to be helping us from the Executive Council. They are going to be helping us with all the tables. There are like 28 tables, and we are 12 people, so we will have something like 2-3 tables per person. You can share your experience. You have all the hashtags and all that, so you can do everything you want with the social networks. But what we are here for is to talk about the future. And the future is a nice thing, because everyone is talking about it, but no one can define what is the future. What is the future to you? Someone know? The fun thing about the future is that the future is nothing. The future is not existing, is not defined, is not created, and is not here. It's nothing. It's just in our minds. It's an expectation. It's you are expecting the future to be something. And whatever you expect is probably what you are going to get. And that is the fun part, because a lot of people talk about the future, but we are talking about something that we expect. And most of the time, we do nothing. We just expect. And what we are going to be talking about is about how can we shape the future? And why is it important to us and to you to think about the future? Some futures are easy, like what are we going to do in the next 3 hours? That is easy. We can predict that quite accurately. What are we going to do in the next year? We have some clues. What are we going to do in 20 years? We don't know. We just don't know at all. We might have some ideas of what we would like to have. We might have some guesses on what we can get, but all of that is just ideas and guesses. We will see when we get there if that future makes sense. But why is this important to you? Most of you work in a government entity or an agency, and that is important because you are defining policies. And the policies are really, really, really interesting because they create the boundaries for everything. If we want cars to fly, we need a policy for that. If we want cars to go over 140 kilometers per hour, we need a policy for that. We have a lot of policies for everything, and policies change everything. If we allow robots to drive cars, we need a policy for that. So looking at the future for policymakers is super interesting because they shape the way society behaves. And they shape businesses, they shape the economy, and they shape people's life. So why is it important for you? Because it helps you understand, when you look into the future, it's helping you to understand what might need to be regulated, what can be liberal and what can be conservative. You can decide on both of them. You can look into the knowledge you have and identify the gaps. If the industry is moving in one direction and you are way behind, you identify the gaps so you can increase the pace, go faster, and catch with the economy. You can build consensus with the stakeholders. You can talk to many different stakeholders in an industry, build consensus, and build new policies that satisfy all of them. You can also identify difficult policy choices. Some of them are more difficult than others. In the healthcare industry, for example, policy making is very difficult because technology goes beyond what we are able to accept right now. In some others, like economy, it's not that difficult. You can make policies quite easily because numbers are easier than people. You can create better strategies when you look at the future. And strategies are the things that make you win. So if you have a better strategy, your chances of winning in the future are higher, a little bit higher. It doesn't mean that you are going to win, but at least you have a little bit more chances of winning. And it helps you mobilize stakeholders into acting. The interesting thing about the future is that it's a lot about doing and very little about talking. Talking about the future is nice at the beginning, when we need to build consensus and when we need to attract people and talent into our ideas. But when people is already on the same ship, the only thing we have to do is row in the same direction, so we can go far, far away from where we are now. And this is something the government is already doing in the UAE. You have a ministry just for that. You have a lot of different programs from Shaping the Future to a Future Foresight Manual. All this is publicly available on the website, and you can download all of them. Even this one, which is the 100 Global Trends for 2050, is a 100 pages book with a lot of information of mega trends and macro trends happening globally. And that is giving you an idea on what the future is going to look like. It doesn't mean that those things are going to happen. Those things are telling you what is happening today and what might happen in the future if everything keeps its same track. But the question here is, how ready are you for the future? Are your entities future-proof? Who thinks their entity is future-proof? One. We have one that is future-proof. Now we are going to test it during the whole day. We don't know. No one is ready for the future just because we don't know the future. We think we are prepared for fragments of the future that we were able to imagine. But we need to imagine more things to test many different futures. And that is interesting because the future, when we think about innovation, for example, innovation is talking about just one single part of the future. And that part is happening here on the upper side and today. If you look at this line here, this is the timeline. This is today, and that is the future. It could be 2 days from now, or it could be 200 years from now. And what you have here are the horizons of innovation. It's the waves that come and go. These waves are always coming. It's like the ocean. You don't have one wave and it stays there. It just comes and go. Another one is coming after that. And that is happening all the day. This chart was created by McKinsey in the 60s, 70s, more or less, and it's telling you about the 3 horizons of the strategy you need to develop in order to look into the future. The first horizon, which is happening today, is the mainstream. That is what the world is talking about. Businesses, governments, policies are in there. That is business as usual. Those are the things you do today. But underneath that, in this line, something is developing. And some people are starting to adapt it. And that is artificial intelligence, technology acceleration, you have self-driving cars. All those things are happening here. Some of them are over here already. Some of them are even on top of it already. But what is happening with that? Some companies are investing just in Horizon 1. To maintain the operations, you have to apply innovation. That is applying innovation with basically 2 goals. The first one is to maximize profits. The second one is to minimize costs. Everything we do, buy technology, introduce a new system, introduce new people, change processes, improvements or innovation that affect the business operations are in there. Now when we think about Horizon 2, we are looking into the near future. And that is about what happens if I change my business a little bit? If now I'm selling A, what happens if I sell B rather than A? They are related, but it's different. Now I don't focus only on A. It's a new business model. It's a new line of income and revenues for the organization. It's a new line of policy making. And that is something that might happen in the near future. And in the Horizon 3, which is starting here, all of them happen at the same time. But the relevance change when you move into the future. At some point in time, Horizon 3 is going to be the new Horizon 1. This could be 20 years from now. And here we are talking about things that are completely different to whatever we are doing today. They challenge my entity, they challenge my business, they challenge my product and service, and we are preparing for that. So imagine if you are, one of the best examples in the world is the taxis and Uber. Those are really fun because taxis are Horizon 1. They try to maintain the business of taxis. But Uber was already available a few years ago. Taxis didn't care about that. Why? Because this is for young people that have phones, and it's only 1% or 2% of my customers. It's not going to be mainstream. It's not going to affect my business. But what happened now in most cities is that Uber is getting a lot of customers, and they are over here. And there is a gap. And now that gap is too big for the taxi drivers. They are losing a lot of money, but it's way too late for them to react. They had all this time, but they didn't focus on it. The issue is that at the same time, all the Uber and things are going to be up there, and now the taxis are going down. But at the same time, this is appearing, and those are self-driving cars. We don't need Uber either. Maybe you need a car that drives itself, but they are not worried about that yet because they are not looking down. It will be an issue again when it gets here. And they start losing revenues, and the self-driving cars companies will be getting everything. And that is going to be a new wave on Horizon 3. But what is coming after that? Maybe we don't need self-driving cars anymore. We have teletransportation, so we don't need cars. And that will be a new wave coming in there. But before that happens, you will have here a new Horizon 3 starting with some companies investing in teletransportation, some patents published on that, some research institutes and academic institutions doing research on teletransportations. We will see it a little bit on the press and the media. We will see it on the TV, on the science part. We will see that someone were able to teletransport a mouse or something, and we will have these signals of something is going to change with transport. We can think of those signals as, how fun is it? They are teletransporting a mouse. Or we can think about, oh wow, they are going to destroy Emirates, Etihad, taxis, cars, Teslas, trains, Hyperloop, and everything. Because now you can travel instantly. Or it could be fun. They teletransported a mouse. So that is the point on how you look into the future. You need to look at what is happening today just to discover if that is going to change the business you already have. So today, you are going to learn on how to read the signals, how to explore the future, understand the new ecosystem that are going to be happening in the near future, and be prepared for that. You are going to envision the opportunities and the challenges and prepare for it. So I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the history of futures thinking. And that history started like in the mid-19th century. It came basically from a strategy, and it's military. If you need to win a war or a battle, you need to plan ahead what your opponent is going to do. So you are anticipating the movements, and those movements are happening in the future. It's coming basically from a strategy, military strategy basically, but then it became a discipline in the mid-60s. In the 60s and 70s, there was an oil crisis, very big in the world, and then you came in at that moment and you solved the oil crisis as a country. And that is super interesting to see, because now you are using all the solution that you created in there to build a different future. So what happened there is that Shell which is one of the biggest oil companies in the world, they started to use futures thinking to predict the prices and the crisis of the oil in the world. So they created the whole framework to look into the future. It was based on numbers, and it was based on production. It was not thinking about new alternative futures for the world, but the futures of selling oil to the world. But they created the framework. Then, South Africa used it to envision the future of a country after the apartheid. And they created the whole vision of the country using futures thinking. One of the biggest universities in the world with postgraduate studies in future thinking is the Stellenbosch University in South Africa. And they were one of the first ones to do this in the world. And then PepsiCo introduced more changes to the frameworks of future thinking to predict how the food is going to be like in 2020. Because they are selling food and beverages. So they wanted to discover how is that going to look like. Because we, as PepsiCo, want to remain relevant in 2020. If everyone is about healthy food and we only sell crisps and chips, maybe we are out of business. So what should we do? We need to change what we do. And you can see everything is green now, 0 fat, 0 sugars, 0 additives. That is nice because that is what PepsiCo discovered in 2010. And they changed everything. There are basically, and this is probably in Arabic, I know you have a little conflict with the words foresighting, forecasting, and future shaping, because most people I talk to here mix them, because in Arabic it seems that it's mostly the same. In English they also mix them, because there are many different ways of perceiving them. But forecasting is the part where you look at the past. You look at it, take data, and you assume that you can draw a line to it, and that in the future everything is going to continue the same. That is assuming a lot. It assumes that resources and systems still behave in the same way in the future. So forecasting tends to fail. If anything changes in the system, the forecasts go down. All that part is looking into the past. Then you have the foresighting. Foresighting is from where I am now. Instead of looking at the past, you look at the future. And for you, probably is the opposite. That is the past, and this is the future. So you look at the future, and when you look at the future, you imagine things that could happen in there. You can't base yourself on data. You can base yourself on signals. I've seen cars flying. What if all the cars fly? What will happen? What might that be like? You look into there and you imagine. So the future is about imagination. It's about being able to question the status quo. Forget about what you do today and just imagine how it could be in the future. And that is forecasting on one side and foresighting on the other side. But the interesting thing is that this is a line. Do you know what is sight in English? It's just to look. And you have 3 types of sight. The hindsight, which is behind you. So it's whatever is just behind you. So you look at the past, and it's explaining you what happened. It's not telling you what is going to happen, just what happened until now. Then you have the insight, and this is the present. It's what I am feeling right now. And it's telling you what will happen based on what I know from the past. And then you have the foresight, which is looking into the future and asking yourself, wow, how can we make this happen? But everything about sight, everything about insight, foresight, hindsight is only in the eye. And the eyes are not actionable. The eyes are giving you information. They give you a vision of something, the past, the present, or the future. But when you look at something, you don't interfere with it. You don't shape it. You don't manipulate. You don't transform it. What you have to do now is discover the difference between forecasting, foresighting, and shaping. The first two are informative. Shaping is transformative. Shaping is when you decide what you want to do and you go and do it. You need to put your hands on the tables and you need just to start working. If you like that future, you need to go there. But why do you need to shape things? Basically because the future is not singular. There is not one future. How many futures do we have? No. We have infinite futures. At least as many as we can imagine. We can imagine many different futures. You can imagine one future with yourself and 20 kids. You can imagine one future with yourself and one kid, and all them in between. And that is only 20 futures, because you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you can imagine many different things. So the future is very, very interesting, because this is where we are today. And this is the present. The present is super easy, because it's just now. We can explain now very easily, because we live it. But when you go far in time and you move ahead into the future, opportunities open up. If I start walking today east, in a few months I might get to Singapore. If I start walking west, in a few months I might get to Turkey. But if I don't move at all, I will stay in the same place. So is my action the one that is going to tell me what the future is going to be like? So the futures open up, and we have an array of possibilities in here. The one that is interesting is this thing in the middle. This thing in the middle is the baseline, is what we are all expecting of the future. And we heard of it. Cars, robots, machine learning, artificial intelligence, living in the space, going to Mars. We are listening to that all the time. That is what we are expecting. And we think it's given, but it's not. Some people are working to create that. We need to take part of that if we want a different future. But why is that? Because this future here is the most probable one. It's the most probable because it's the one we hear and everyone is working here to produce that one. But we also have all the spectrum of futures in that cone. Those are all possible futures, things that could happen. Some of them are plausible. They are achievable with the things we have, with the technology, resources, teams, etc. And some of them are just probable, very likely to happen. The one that is in the middle is both probable, plausible, and possible. But what happens if the future that for our country, our entity, our family, the future that we like the most is not this one? What happens if it is just this one here? And most of the world is going towards here. But we want to be here. This is our preferable future. This is the future we prefer. It can be with many different interests. It can be economic interests, it can be sustainability interests, it can be national interests for a future to develop. But when the future that you prefer is not the baseline, you have to shape it from here to here. That is future shaping. You twist things to get the future you prefer. And that is what everything is about. You don't think about artificial intelligence. You think about how can I use artificial intelligence to benefit me and my company and my entity and my country the most. That is shaping. The other part are foresighting, forecasting, or innovation, where you just apply it to the things you do, you just see it, or you just follow the trends on what the rest of the companies are doing. Future thinking is tricky because it's not a discipline in itself. In order to think of the future, you have to think of many different things. It's not a solo performance. There is no one person that can sit and tell you the future is this. No one. What you need is an orchestra. You need a lot of people playing many different instruments, and those make the music. Not just from one solo performance, but from an orchestra of experienced minds with many different fields and expertise telling you what the future is going to look like in their different disciplines. In here, you can see that we have a line that is telling you the constraints. Here, things on this extreme of the line are very constrained, like a strategy. A strategy is constrained because we want to achieve something, and that something is one thing that is specific and it's detailed. On the other side, you have art, which has no boundaries at all. It's unconstrained. What do you want to achieve with art? You don't really know. It has to be beautiful, it has to be emotional, it has to produce feelings. It's not constrained by any means, so it's just on this side. And then in the middle, you have all the intersections of those things. You have design, which is shaping things into form. It can be graphic design, or it can be product design, it can be service design. There are many things in there. Then you have the intersection of design and strategy, which is design thinking. You have speculative design, which is talking about the future. It's creating objects and things that look like they come from the future, but actually they don't exist. But it's speculating about things that might happen in the future. And that is in between strategy, design, and art. When you think about science fiction, it's basically art. All the movies we have in our minds are art. But they are telling stories from the future. And the interesting thing is that those stories from the future that we see in the theaters, the movies, the TV shows, those things are shaping the expectations we have about the future. We want cars to fly because we've seen them in movies. Not because we thought it was a good idea. Indeed, having a car flying and a crash on the air is twice more dangerous than having it on the floor. On the floor, you just crash, and it's all. On the air, you crash, and you don't fall down. So you have twice the impact. But we still want cars to fly. Why? Because we've been told by science fiction that it will be nice. And there are companies doing just that. We want to live in Mars because we saw in the movie. We saw all that in the stories, so we want to do it. And we inspire people since they are little children just to grow up thinking that they are going to establish a company that is going to travel to Mars and is going to move humanity from Earth to Mars. And you have Elon Musk. He's the one doing that, exactly. And he was just a science fiction fanatic when he was a kid. And then you have futures thinking, which is talking a lot about the strategy, a little bit about art, and a little bit about design. It's about having the constraints of strategy, the unconstraints of art, and being able to shape it through designing new things. That is what future thinking is about. However, this map is not finished, it's not defined, and it's not made on consensus, because many different frameworks apply everywhere in the world. So what we are going to look into today is just one of many frameworks. This is the framework we've been using for the last 5 years. This framework has been curated among the customers we work for. We started with the academic ones, which are very intense, very strict, and you have to follow many rules. We went into the business and design ones, which are very open and very collaborative. And in the last 5 years, we were shaping the framework that had the right amount of academic part and the right amount of flexibility, so it can be applied from startups to government entities. That is what you have today. This framework has basically 5 steps. You can see this more or less in all the frameworks, between 5 to 6 steps. The first one is about observing, is this little part here. You have to be aware of everything. If you like meat, you have to read about fish. If you like sustainability, you have to read about pollution. Don't read about the things you know. Don't read about the things you like. They are only making you confident on your knowledge. You don't need to get confident on your knowledge. You already know your knowledge. You need to get a view on what is around that you don't know. If you like to travel to one city, read about another one before traveling to that one. So you don't get prepared for the city, just get lost. Read about many things. That is observing. It's about looking at horizons, about scanning on things you don't know, about discovering what people and enterprises are doing all around the globe, and what messages are they sending. Then you have the sense making. When you have all these new things coming into your mind, you need to make sense of those things. You need to discover the patterns, the lines connecting those ideas that you read about. You need to discover what is happening here really. Is this relevant? Is this growing? Is this weak? Is this a strong signal of something moving? That is in sense making. You need to make sense about what you read. And then you go into envisioning. When you have patterns of behavior that are emerging, you start imagining how will the world look like in the future if this happens and change everything. And you imagine it. That is free. We all have brains and we can imagine a lot of different things. So you can just sit 1 hour per day and think about everything. And then you have the storytelling. And this is super important because what is the most important thing that humans do? Different from animals. It's talk. We talk. We tell stories. Why do we tell stories? To attract people, to tell them this is dangerous, or this is good. You can go there, or you can come here. You will be safe here, you will be not so safe there. So we use that in the conversations. So when you have one idea of the future, what you really need to do is engage people around your idea. You create a community around you of people that is supporting you, people that is believing that is a good future. And that is helping to do something really, really interesting, which is transforming the future, is shaping from today into something big that is going to be a better future with a lot of people engaged in here. And this is the difficult part, is engaging people to shape it. Now we have some things that are happening already. For example, the global climate change. Most of the people and most of the countries are aligned that that is happening. Some of them are still not. They think that this is not happening, but most of them are. So they created a whole conversation, and the storytelling about climate change has been around for how many years? Almost 30, 40 years. And no one did anything in 40 years. We are starting to do it now. Very tiny things. In Europe, we are removing oil in 2040, 2050, something like that. For the UAE, you have a strategy to produce the last barrel of oil on the 31st of December of 2049. It's a strategy. We will see if that happens at the end, and we will see if we don't use cars and we don't use oils. But that is moving from storytelling to shaping. Is when you engage a lot of people, and all that people is moving towards changing the way we do things and transforming. In Europe, the car makers started to complain because the announcement that the engines have to be electric was in December, November last year, and they had only 30 years to change the factories. And all the car makers said that they don't have time to do it. It's like, come on, it's 30 years. You can do a lot of things in 30 years. Even kids that are not yet born will go through school, university, and a couple of jobs before that happens. So you can change everything, but they are not buying the story. They don't want to buy the story because in that future, they are out. Car makers will be out unless they go electric. And that is not an easy movement in the company. It will happen at the end. In the bags that you have two important things. That one of them is going to be interesting reading for you. This book that you have in your hands, some of you have it now, is 250 pages of the trends that are going to be shaping 2019 all around the globe. We as a company publish one of those every year. By the end of the previous year, so January more or less, we have one of those books. It's telling you about the things that are happening so you can apply them to any industry. You can read it. It's not easy to read because it's very long. You won't be able to read it in just today, but it will be nice if by tomorrow you read at least the chapter number 1, which is decentralize everything. Then you have the second one, which is the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Future. Have you seen this movie? It was called the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. You know what hitchhiking is? You use your thumb and you pick one car that it's taking you somewhere, but you don't know where because it depends on where the car goes. That is telling you that hitchhiking is taking you to multiple destinations and you don't know which one. That is what this guide is about. In this guide, you have for each of the parts, the steps in the process, you have many different tools that you can use in your entity. Today, we are going to be using just one of those tools per step. Because those tools, some of them are complex, some of them are easier, but none of them could be done in just 1 hour. So we are going to do it a little bit fast to show you how you move across the process, but then you have the whole book where you can read the process by yourself and you can read the different tools you could be using. What we are going to be doing between today and tomorrow is, day 1 is today. We had the introduction, and we are going to be working on the 2 first steps, is observing and sense making. Observing is going to be 1 hour, starting just after I finish, and sense making is going to be just 1 hour. We will be finishing more or less by 1 p.m. Tomorrow is going to be about envisioning, storytelling, and transforming. The topic that we are going to be working on is decentralization. Do you know what is decentralization? There is something in the world happening right now that is making this to happen very fast. Anyone knows what might be? Blockchain. Blockchain is the culprit of decentralization. Bitcoin, not so important. It goes up and down. It has no value because it just relies on the will of people to pay more for something. but there is no value underneath. But blockchain, wow, now that's interesting. That is a complete different thing. We are talking about blockchain, decentralization of jobs, how you can work for multiple people from everywhere without being there. Decentralization of ownership, why you don't need to own things and everything is going to be a service. We are talking about decentralization of countries, how you might not need to have central governments anymore, and you are going to just redeploy local governments and even neighborhood governments. So that is decentralizing everything. We are going through it for the last 10, 15 years, all over the world, in big countries, small countries, in any kind of country, this is happening at a very, very high scale, because it simplifies a lot of things, and you don't need to create a lot of structure to maintain things. It happens even inside companies. You don't have departments, you don't have functions, and you don't have sections. You just have people. And people work on things they like to work with and things they are going to complete. So it's like goal-oriented rather than department-oriented. So this is happening everywhere, and this is going to be the topic. This is the first macro trend that it's in the book you have. Tomorrow is going to be about envisioning. It will be great if you read the 15 pages about that, because it will give you a lot of ideas as a basis to think for tomorrow. And that is going to be really, really helpful for the activities of tomorrow. Today, you don't need to read it. We planned for it, okay? Because reading it takes time. So I'm going to pass to Helga.
So I'm going to be going through the activities that we're going to make you work now, actually. So I'll explain you a little bit what it's about, and then I will go with you step by step through what's supposed to happen here during the next hour. The first step of future thinking is observing, which is one of the main components, and it's really important to help you have a global vision of what is happening in the world today to be able to detect what it is that might be happening in the world around us. To observing is to search for signals of emerging change, of things that are changing in our society and are going to shape our future world. Looking for signals about, for example, new technologies, new concepts, new methods of doing things, new ideas that people are starting to talk about, thoughts, movements, and things that are shaping the society. It can be everything from facts and to things that people just would like to happen in the world. It is really important, as Michael said, that we search for signals both in fields that we know, but most of the time we know kind of what's happening in our own industry. But it's really important also to search for signals in other industries, because quite often new technologies or concepts or ways of doing things can be adapted to our own industry and will revolutionize it completely. We will, when we search for signals, we make a brief draft, a brief explanation of what it is that's the interesting part of what we have found. I will show you here 2 examples of how a signal might be defined. For example, these are both signals within the topic of decentralization. And for example, this one here on the left side is about ownership. It's about that it's happening in the world today that people don't want to or don't need to own everything, that we can share things, we can rent them, we can borrow them, etc. from other people. This is a company in London which is like a furniture rental company. It rents out furniture, really high-class design furniture and art pieces for people to both decorate their homes if they have parties, event spaces, Airbnbs for weddings, for whatever. So you can have all these nice items in your space when you have people around. And then they just take them back. And that is it's also, because it's people, it's decentralized because it's individuals offering these objects that they own, these really nice objects, for others to rent from them. So it's like a platform that a lot of people connect to and shares the possessions that they have. Another thing in decentralization is, for example, blockchain, which is this global network of registration, verification, trust, currency, etc., which many of you most likely know something about. That is, in Walmart, the supermarket chain in the States, they're using that blockchain system to verify where their products come from, so that you know, like, who made them, how they were grown, if they are biological, if nobody was badly treated while producing them or growing them, etc. So it's like it's a confirmation of good ethics in the production line. But it's publicly verified, so the people who actually work on it, they verify that it's well done. So that's about decentralization. It's kind of about giving the power a little bit back to the people. So we don't always trust just somebody else, but we take a little bit of responsibility and initiation into our own hands also. Today, you're going to learn how to find signals on your own. And we have prepared some cards which our teams are spreading out on the tables now, which are in white, but they have lines on them, and you're supposed to fill them out. And you will fill them out to look a little bit like this. So they have some headline, which explains what it is that you found, like the main topic, and then it explains it in a few more words, how that works. And you can make a drawing at the bottom to show it visually. It might be that you would like only the drawing in some cases, but you can just decide on what you find comfortable for each occasion. So you will start with that. You will have now 20 minutes to look for signals, 1 to 2 signals per person. And we provide you with some magazines and newspapers, so you can search for things. It's really new magazines about like innovation, technology, some emerging things. And you can also use your mobile phones to search on internet. And I put here up a few both places where to look for signals, because really good. We took, for example, like places like news on Google, like Google News, Medium.com, Fast Company, Harvard Business Reviews, and the news from the MIT, which all have articles which are like pretty sharp, short, and have the concepts of innovation quite easily explained. And signals we usually get from articles, from tweets, from blogs, from forums where people are talking about things. We get them from the news. They're quite often news from startups about things that they would like to change in the world, where you can detect those emerging changes. So you can Google all of these. We made here a short list of keywords for you to use in related to decentralization while you Google or browse in the magazines. For example, decentralization of economy, of the grid, which is like self-generated systems, cryptocurrencies, the future of money. The sharing economy in total is decentralized systems. The future of decentralized energy, future of ownership, not to own, services, gig economy. We have the what would you call it? The review economy, which is the definition of, for example, in TripAdvisor, when all these comments of people saying if something is good or something is bad, which controls where we go, what to do, what we eat, etc. So it's a big economical force which is based on decentralization. So now you have those 20 minutes to go through all of these. We'll put a timer on, and we are a group of 12 people that will be going around from one table to another, helping you out if you have some problems and guiding you through the system. And the next 20 minutes is going to be that you are going to read out loud the signals that you found to the rest of the people on your table. So you all know what it is that you have. And then for the last 10 minutes of the session, you will put out, because we prepared for you also, because it's not enough time for you to find loads of signals for each group. We prepared 20 signals for each table that we found on internet related to decentralization. So at the end of the session, you will put all those cards, the 20 that we gave you, and 10, 15 from each table, lay them all out on the table and have a look. Then in the next session, you will start working on all of them together and clusterizing them. But now you have 20 minutes to make your own signal, 1 or 2, and 20 minutes to read the signal, the content that you found, to the rest of the team, your team members. And we will be, I'll see you at your tables, and you can get started now. I think, is there all the, yeah, there are magazines on every table. Yes, so you can start. Thank you.
Is not the future anymore, it's the present. So you will never reach the future. It's always there. You can move, but the future is moving too. You move again, and it moves again. So you need to constantly read, learn, and explore. You have to be observing all the time. And when you observe, you collect signals. It's like collecting things. You have to get thousands of them every month. And that is helping you to move in the next one, which is making sense of everything you are discovering. When you have a lot of signals and a lot of elements on top of your table, you need to start making sense of them. Some of the signals, some of the cards you are finding are going to be very tiny. They're going to be weak. They're going to be small things that happen today, and probably they don't happen again, and they just go nowhere. Some of them are going to be really strong, and those signals are going just to take a very good opportunity in the future, and they're going to open it up. But we need to discover the meaning behind that. Do you know what is a trend? Anyone knows what is a trend? It's how things move into the future, something that is going to happen. Anyone else has a better definition of a trend? External factors that might affect whatever, something. It can be your industry or anything else. A trend is a collection of signals that are gaining traction. It can be up or down, but when they are together, all those signals, they make sense. So when we talk about sense making, we are talking about discovering and connecting the things we have so we can discover if this group of things together is growing or decreasing. If it's a positive sentiment around it or a negative one. It can be growing a lot. A lot of people talking about sugar, for example. But what is the sentiment around sugar? It's bad. Sugar is bad for the health, it's bad for the planet, it's bad for the agriculture. It's growing, the trend goes up, but not everything that goes up is good. Sometimes it can be bad. And there are two ways of going up and down. You can go slowly over time, or you can go really fast. So you have trends can go up and down, they can go fast and slow, and they can be positive or negative. So those things are the things we discover with sense making. We need to make sense of the things we find. How we do that? We connect things together. We just need to put things together and see if the things I found today are different from the things I found yesterday. If yesterday I found 2 things talking about Bitcoin, and today I found 10, there's been a 500% increase in that trend. People are talking more about this. And some other times we discover emotions around that. People was very excited about Bitcoin 3 years ago. They are very sad today about Bitcoin. Yes, because Bitcoin in 2017, it was worth $15,000 per Bitcoin. Today, it's 3,000. Someone lost 5 times their money they put, so they are sad. And it never catch up to the same price. The peak of it was in December 2017, $15,000. Since then, it's been going down and down and down and down. People keep talking a lot about Bitcoin, but the sentiment shift. At the beginning, it was exciting. Now, it's negative. So that is telling you a lot of different things in that trend. In blockchain, which is the underlying technology, conversation has been growing up and excitement has been growing up during the same amount of time. So you can get meaning from that. You can understand why one is positive and the other one is negative. That is all about sense making. It's discovering the behaviors, discovering the mental models, discovering the emotions, and discovering the connections between things. It's like connecting the taxis, the Uber, and the self-driving cars. We have signals that are separate, but then we can see all of them are talking about mobility within a city. And mobility is just not the taxis, the Ubers, or the self-driving cars. Maybe ownership of a car is inside there too. So what we are going to be here is just take all the signals we have inside on top of the table, and we are going to just clarify what they mean. And we are going to start collecting them and putting them together, grouping them by groups. Those things are called clusters, a cluster of things that look the same. You can see how we separate this. This is going to be 1 hour too. This is a little bit more difficult than the previous one because you have to talk a lot. Imagine that I think taxis are mobility, and I think that petrol prices are mobility too. I have to explain why the oil for me is mobility, and maybe you don't agree, because my perspective is based on my experience. So is yours. So you need to convince everyone in the table that one thing belongs to that group, and you have to explain why. But if they don't think they belong there, maybe you are an outlier, and you have some misinformation, or you are living in the future and you know something that no one else is able to see. But this is about talking on the meaning, the underlying meaning of the things you have on your table. So the process is very easy. The process, you have also some paper sheets on the table that explain the process we are going to go through. The process we are going to do during sense making is mapping. We are going to make a map of the whole signals you have on the table. In order to do that, we need to group them. Group them by similarity, group them by technology, group them by color, group them by shape, group them by something you find relevant, that you find is binding all those signals together. We can start with the first car. We take one signal, and that is going to be the first group. We don't have any group. We put it in there. Then you take a second one. Everyone read the signals, and you decide if that is similar to the first one or is a completely new thing. If it is a new thing, you put it separate. You take the third one, and you discuss it again. If it's the one of the two previous ones, you put it together. If it's completely different, you make a new group. And that is the process, how you discuss if things are the same, or they are related, or if they are completely new things. We have to do that for about, Helga, do you know the
hour to make the clusters, and then we had like 10 minutes after that to name the clusters.
Okay. So the first part is the 30 minutes to make the clusters. You have to use the signals you created and the signals we gave you. So you have to get around 20 to 40 signals on the table. So you have to start reading and grouping them for 30 minutes. When you finish the groups, you need to invent a name for that group. It has to be a nice name. It doesn't have to be group 1, group 2, group 3. The names should describe what you have inside the group. So it's a tiny 3-4 words name that is explaining what is inside. So the team is going to be helping you to do the clustering. So they are going to be following you in case you need assistance. Okay? If you have a tie, two of the clusters with the same votes, you have to untie. You vote again only between those two, and you choose just one. That is going to be the cluster we use tomorrow to start with the next activity. Right? So what we did today is basically look for signals and make sense of those signals. You were able to group things together, put a name, and choose one. This is going to be our investment for the future. The one you chose is the technology, the trend, the signal, the meaning you are going to invest. You are going to put all your teams, all your company, all the people in your country to work for that. If not all of you have this book, we have more copies. Some of you have a USB drive rather than the book. So if you have a USB drive, let us know, because we can give you a copy rather than a pen drive, okay? In this book, you can read today the first chapter, Decentralize Everything, because that is going to be interesting for what we have to do tomorrow. You can just read it here, and you will get a lot of ideas that are related to the things you have in the table. And tomorrow, we will be following the rest of the processes in the other book. Okay? So you can also read part of this if you want, but we will be doing a scenario planning and choosing alternative futures tomorrow. So thank you so much. I think now it's time for you to take lunch, and she's going to say it. I don't want to steal because I don't know how to say it in Arabic. But I know how to say shukran. So thank you so much for being here today. And we will see you again tomorrow.